Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Many of you may have met me before. My name is Kayla. I'm part of Bo's team. So I'll be co-hosting our webinar today with Austin. I am Acelab's Partner Success Operations Manager. And I'll let Austin introduce himself in just a bit. And of course, I think you all know Bo. Bo is going to be in the background today, making sure everything runs smoothly. So before we get started with everything, I am going to quickly take over screen share and show you guys a little bit more about where you can find outdoor living supply on your Acelab page. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. All right, so here we are. When you are on your main Acelab page here, this is what you're going to see. Once you want to search for outdoor living supply, you'll go up to the search bar up here. Make sure you're toggled onto brands, and you'll see them here. So here on Outdoor Living Supplies page, you can scroll down, learn a little bit more about them. You can see some highlighted items here. We've got video, and then of course we've got a full list of their products here for you to click into and explore and learn more about each of those. And then, of course, at the bottom we have some inspiration photos as well. So be sure to check out their page when you get a chance. I'll drop this link in the chat for you to see. But in the meantime, I'm just going to want to make sure I go over a few things here before we get started. First and foremost, I want to remind everyone to use the Q&A to drop in any questions at any point during the webinar. Towards the end, we'll go through those with Austin and answer as many questions as we have time for. You're also going to see a poll pop up during the webinar. I encourage you to fill that out, and then after the webinar, we'll have a survey for you as well. And last but not least, this is a course that you'll get a learning unit credit for. So to do that, we're going to have you fill out a form, which I'm going to drop a link in the chat for. So be sure to go to the chat, look for that link, and fill that out to ensure that you get credit for today's course. I think that's about everything. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to you, Austin, to get us started.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Kayla. Yeah, good morning or good afternoon to wherever you're at. If I've had the opportunity to have a webinar with you before, thank you again for taking your time out of your day and learning a little bit about natural stone. And that's really my primary background with these courses is through natural stone and just all the benefits of why I choose natural stone. And in this case for today, it's going to be all about natural stone thin veneer and the basics associated with that. So I'll talk about broad topics with what thin veneer is, comparing it to that of its benefits and its counterparts. And hopefully you learn something about natural stone and really what makes it so unique and so versatile in today's application and the uses that it has. So Kayla mentioned that you can get credit for this course for AIA, LACES, NKBA. Really, the list goes on and on. If you don't find that link helpful, you can also just type in ceuevents.com and it'll prompt you to enter that code listed on this slide. And I can also send that certificate over to you that way as well. So this is just my basic contact info. Throughout the presentation, we'll talk about the Natural Stone Institute, and then more than happy after the presentation is finished to talk more about outdoor living supply, what we offer and what we stand for, and as we continue to grow, our really unique product offering as well. So for those of you that have heard of the Natural Stone Institute or are familiar a little bit with them, they love natural stone. They're going to obviously be a proponent for anything natural stone related if it's a viable option or source for a project. But just to kind of give you a little bit of a background about what I do And what my vision or their vision is to uphold. It's all about accurate, ongoing education, promoting their values, their benefits, really any best practice that they have with natural stone for yourselves as architects and designers, and really any professional in the construction industry. I do become certified to teach these courses through the Natural Stone Institute. So I promise I know a little bit about what I'm talking about, and all of that is to uphold my responsibilities, their responsibilities in promoting their educational standards. So I mentioned a little bit the courses, the continuing education courses that back the Natural Stone Institute is quite extensive. This is really just a small list for this particular course. So that's another huge thing when looking for colleagues in respective fields. A lot of them are going to be able to get credit for these courses as well. So if you're a little bit unsure, more likely than not, the Natural Stone Institute can offer that continuing education credit to many in this industry that we are in. So, just to do a brief overview of what the class will be for today, it's all about providing a basic understanding of really actually a relatively new use of natural stone, in this case as a thin veneer, and really exploring its beauty, the durability of it for all sorts of projects around the world, talking about its history, how it's produced, talking a lot about common application and techniques for installing it, and then just really how the opportunities for it are growing day by day as we continue to innovate. So the kind of four key points that we'll go throughout the presentation. We'll talk about quarrying and fabricating best practices that really demonstrate and promote the natural stones industry for advocacy of social, economic, and environmental responsibility. We'll talk about cost saving benefit to the design and building markets utilizing natural stone, in this case as a veneer, and then also achieve comparable aesthetic results to that of its counterpart, in this case, a full bed or a full stone veneer application. We'll talk about sustainability attributes of natural stone thin veneer that really promote and support green building philosophies. And then we'll contrast the physical and performance characteristics of natural stone thin veneer compared to that of maybe some other manufactured products that maybe are correctly specified the appropriate material for proper installation and need. So if you're familiar with thin veneer and what it is, you might know this already, but for those that are new to it or don't know really what a thin veneer is, simply what it is it's a natural stone that is cut to a range thickness of 3/4 to an inch and a half thick. To make a natural stone a thin veneer, it has to be 15 pounds per square foot or less. So that includes the stone, that includes your mortar, that includes your metal lath, your water barrier, all those types of things. Unless it's underneath that 15 pounds per square foot, it's actually not going to be classified as a thin veneer. So as long as it meets that criteria in that square foot range, that is a thin veneer stone when being installed properly. And then for a full bed, and really the aesthetic appeal of a thin veneer is to achieve a full bed look. And so you have the cost savings, you have the weight savings, but the end goal when installed properly and correctly is it looks just as beautiful in this case as a 4-inch traditional full bed stone. And so, as I've mentioned, it's 1 to 2 inches thick, so it takes up less real estate. It takes less time to install. You don't have to have it load bearing on the foundation. It's something that's adhered straight to whatever substrate that you are using. Easier to handle, obviously reduces physical demands for your laborers or your installers that are putting that thin veneer on the project. So really a full circle benefit of using thin veneer, if applicable, can be a huge cost savings, a huge weight savings, and ultimately make your projects more efficient. And so there'll be lots of photos as well throughout the presentation showing thin veneer in lots of various applications. So just to start off with looking at really why thin stone, the range of application and variants you can have is kind of shown as in these two photos. You can do carving and intricately installing in very unique shapes and forms, or you can do on the right photo a little bit more of a traditional thin veneer kind of cladding exterior application. So the options and the variance is very wide on that front. But when talking about the history of natural stone, really what brought it about and made thin veneer more popular in recent years, it starts all the way back to projects such as this in the early 1800s. So in this case, you have a sawn bed split face, which just simply means that back of the stone is sawn so it can adhere quickly and simply to that surface, but it has that natural split front face that gives it that texture and that uniqueness of natural stone. So this is just a cool photo. This is all limestone that you see in this photo. And when talking about the benefit of it, being able to carve it and to shape it, the attention to detail as shown in this photo, all of that was able to be done because of the softness, in this case, of this natural stone. And that only progresses and leads to other unique ways that they started to install stone, in this case, in more of a cobblestone-like veneer. It was very popular in this case in Western New York in the 1830s to the 1860s. And really, they don't serve as a structural purpose, they're more as an aesthetic purpose for this case. But we started to see a little bit of that tradition of maybe not those big, heavy traditional blocks and more of a full bed style that we used to put stone on buildings or build entire buildings out of stone. Now we were starting to put it on top of things to maybe showcase a little bit of its beauty and its uniqueness. So very commonly now we've seen there's manufactured stone, which can sometimes be referred to as cultured stone, and then you have a natural stone. Really, the easiest way to differentiate the two, natural stone is raw and quarried from within the earth. It's not changed. Its genetic makeup is as it is when it's pulled and quarried. Whereas a manufactured stone is a concrete resin that is cast or fired with different dyes, maybe some additives and some colorings to give it that appearance of a natural stone. So kind of the main difference of the two. Obviously, one is made out of man-made materials, whereas the other is raw material extracted from within the earth. So kind of oxidizing and showing those 2 points here on the left and right that I talked about. Again, natural stone, it's quarried, it's processed into those typical veneer formats in that 3/4 to about an inch and a half in thickness. They run it through that saw that makes it into that thickness that we see today. Different offcuts are utilized, which I'll touch on here in a little bit. And then that coloration that you see, that unique veining, that mineral deposits within the stone, it just naturally runs throughout it. So no one stone is ever going to be the same, which is really unique with a natural stone. Whereas a manufactured stone or a cultured stone, latex forms are created from select pieces of natural stones to kind of give it the mold and the look a natural stone can offer. You have the iron oxide pigmentation that I mentioned that is essentially painted into that mold. And then really just an important thing to know with a lot of things like hardscape materials, most of it can't impregnate that surface or penetrate much further past that finite top layer. So you're not going to get that same color veining running throughout the stone, whereas you get with a natural stone. And then lightweight concrete is poured into those forms, into those molds, It's vibrated to reduce those air bubble pockets, similar to that of any type of concrete that is poured. And then you have your manufactured stone. So, just in summary, striations of naturally occurring materials are very difficult to imitate in really any material, whether it's a manufactured stone or any other type of man-made for that matter. Manufactured stone, also good to know, is actually only suitable for a vertical application. So, in this case, on the sides of homes, other types of buildings, if it's installed horizontally, technically it's not suitable and can have damage, wear, breakdown that ultimately just won't allow it to have the service life of a natural stone. And then this is a given, but when talking about natural stone, it's very durable. It's very suitable for both vertical and horizontal applications. In that case, a lot of walking surfaces. And then most natural stones will have a very low or minimal porosity compared to that of a manufactured stone, which makes it more suitable for those horizontal applications. So when looking at a full bed stone, you can kind of see there on the right, it's generally that 4-inch thickness that I mentioned. It's load bearing. So that's where you have those brackets installed on the foundation. That's what's really taking the brunt of the weight of this full bed instead of onto that maybe substrate that a traditional veneer or thin veneer would do. Typically for a masonry veneer, the stone is set into the wall with those wall ties at mortar bed, and then the corners are full depth. So we'll talk about why veneers have corners and flats, as shown right here. So looking at a corner versus a flat, very simply, obviously a flat is a flat piece of stone that is installed on the building when you get to a 90-degree angle or a curve that you want to achieve with cutting that stone. That's when you would maybe install a corner piece to give it that full bed natural wraparound look. And so some of the accessories with natural stone that you can do, as seen here on the upper right or the bottom, the face of the full bed veneer is sawn off at approximately that 1-inch thickness. The thin stone is directly adhered to that prepared substrate. And then those corners are cut or engineered to give the appearance of that full bed stone. So depending on where you install your projects and what areas, some areas actually require full bed versus that of veneer because they don't want to have a look that takes away from a natural stone. But the benefit of a corner is you can help that achieve the full bed look. Maybe instead of butting the two corners together, like in more of the top photo, you can have that full wraparound look, whereas still having the weight reduction, but giving the appearance of that full bed natural stone. So, kind of going through that process of from the quarry installed, in this case, to the wall of a home or to an exterior project, how it's made is really neat and really intuitive, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But when you look at the sustainability of natural stone, it's nearly complete as a building material once it's extracted or quarried. It's recyclable, it's very low maintenance to maintain and to keep clean. It does not emit any VOCs, which is sometimes important for things such as redless free or off gassing in that nature. It is one of the most durable materials on the planet. And then, really, how is natural stone manufactured versus that of these other materials? There's a lot longer list that goes in to getting some of those materials to their final state versus that of a natural stone. So if you've heard of sustainability standard, in this case with Natural Stone and the Natural Stone Institute works together with quarries, with fabrication shops to really highlight the things that I've talked about so far with the sustainability side. A lot of them have to go through the process of a very rigorous, tight-knit standard to achieve by and to uphold. When talking about the benefits of sourcing natural stone, a lot of them will They will aim to strive to be platinum certified and really just uphold an extra level of standard and regulation to make sure that the processes they go through are really promoting their natural stone and maybe giving them a leg up from the competition when sourcing some of that material. So reclaim stone, getting it from quarries. If you've ever been to a quarry or done a quarry tour before, you see just big piles of stone kind of pushed to the side in random piles and shapes and segments. All of that stone is used for a purpose, whether it's going to be crushed into an aggregate, it's going to be recycled or bought back through buyback programs. All of it is being used for something, even if it's not looking like it's being used at that exact moment. And really, the equipment side of things is what makes that possible. So, seeing the saw making, seeing a guillotine be able to cut these pieces, any lower yield percentage natural stones, all of that can be reused and repurposed. And so, the machinery to cut and to shape these stones that we see today, that's what's made projects so much more readily available and more cost friendly is the machinery and the engineering has only improved over the last decade or so. And tying into that with the machinery is packaging. So pallets or palletized natural stone is generally shipped on trucks. They use those pallets and reuse those pallets. They will actually do rebates and buybacks from pallets that are finished after that first delivery. And so that's an incentive to reuse and recycle those pallets, bring them back to the quarry, back to the fabricator. And then in other ways, if not being palletized, the packaging is tight knit, it's efficient, and it helps get the natural stone to its final state in the most green and environmentally friendly manner as possible. And so when I talk about that byproduct of natural stone, a lot of people would see those thin pieces in that top photo and would kind of see it as scrap or really there's not too much of a use for it if they've already cut and used the piece of stone they need. But in this case, with a natural stone, just like you can do with a cultured stone or a manufactured stone, you can create panels of that thin stone and you can set them and then you can install the natural stone in a panelized set. And that just only keeps natural stones availability and usability just one more extra step of if you don't have a use for it, in that case, you can also use it to construct panels. When, as an architect or a designer, the quality control is really probably the biggest process that you want to emphasize in the design phase. So, same as a quarry has quality control. When you consider all these different things listed here on this slide, that's what can help maximize the natural stone and its usability. Being able to use 80% of that block in that photo versus having to only take one little piece of it and then they have to either reuse it or repurpose it in another way. That can help drive costs down. That can help improve lead times and efficiencies and all of those different things when taking into consideration quality control for your products. So if you've ever seen natural stone or been to a showroom, really the biggest highlight of it is its variance, the patterns, the sizes, the options that you have. They're really endless. You can go from something as simple as to a rough cobble look where they really don't change the stone much at all. You can have it be super nominal or dimensional linear pieces. They can be cut into nice squares and rects and more of maybe of a hardscape paver pattern. You can do that bottom photo there is like a cool basket weave style. It's really endless what you want to do with it. And if you want to change the look even more, you can just simply flip over that stone if it's so fit. So that's just a really unique way that a lot of customers will love natural stone is it always has a uniqueness to it, especially when it's installed on the property or project. So, kind of breaking down the two basic main groups of what a natural stone is and the available varieties that we can get. The two main groups are your calcareous stones or your siliceous stones. Just very simply, calcareous stones are made up of calcium carbonate in the mineral decomposition or deposits in that stone. A siliceous stone is made up of your silicates. So as you move further right onto this little graph here in this little chart, the harder the stone gets as you go throughout. And then the darker the stone gets also usually means the harder that stone also becomes. So when you look on that left side, you see limestones, you see travertines, you see sandstones. Those are your softer stones, and they usually come in a lighter color. Now you can get darker, harder Indiana limestones that are further right on this chart. But that's a good rule of thumb when looking throughout stones and looking at it. A wider, chalkier limestone is going to be a much softer stone than a darker, harder, like I've mentioned, Indiana limestone. So a good rule of thumb. There's always exceptions to everything. So not every stone is going to abide by that rule. But for the most part, when you see that, you can say, oh, that natural stone is a darker colored natural stone than that counterpart over there that's lighter, generally going to be a denser, harder stone. So again, more varieties, more options when looking at the types of stones you can quarry and really quarry in our backyard if you're here in the States. There's so many you can source locally, and if not, the Natural Stone Institute is a global organization. So you can look at quarries and fabrication shops from all over the world on their website. So patterns, again, when you go for the left side of a more traditional ledge, you can do a more mosaic random rubble stone on the right side, kind of giving it more of a flagstone appeal. It's up to you. And natural stone offers you that choice for variance and variability in its installation look. You can do, in this case, a sawn bed ashlar on the left side, different specific heights for coursing. You can do a random squares and rec on the right. In this case, it's a castle, just showcasing more and more of the variants you can receive. And then I talked a little bit about those prefabbed panels that you can get. That's also endless, which is a great plus. I like to highlight that ledgestone photo on the bottom. One of the greatest benefits of natural stone, if not already said 10 times today, is its variability and its variance in the colors and the veining you can receive. Some natural stones can offer little surprises. In this case, they can throw that nice rusted dark brown photo piece or that natural stone into a mix. If a customer is ever a little apprehensive about having a linear monochrome look, there are natural stones that can absolutely achieve that. Some of them, maybe not so much, and they can be a little bit of a headache in that specifying process. But just knowing that most natural stones, you can get a pretty consistent look as quarries have gotten really good at separating different types and different sections of natural stone. So looking at the value differences really between natural stone and manufactured, that's where you get probably your biggest hurdle is sometimes a natural stone in most markets can be more expensive, but other markets it can be up to 20% less. So it just depends on the availability of that region, the material you're sourcing. Is it in a remote quarry? Is it a small quarry? Is it a seasonal quarry? All of those things talking about corners and radius work will factor in to the cost side of a natural stone. But more cases than not, if you do a little bit of shopping around, just like for anything, you can find a very comparable, and in this case, a natural stone to maybe match or measure up to that of maybe some manufactured products. Thin stone, I've talked about, has that higher production rate, which results in a lower labor cost. So when maybe looking more on the cost side of things, a lot of that stone is generally reclaimed or is being repurposed, and you can get it at a much lower cost. And then going forward, talking about different basic application techniques, there's lots of different types of quarries. If you've ever seen a quarry, there are pit quarries, there are block quarries, similar to when you see those big videos of those big marble slabs being pushed over. A lot of quarries will be boulder quarries or more of like a slate quarry where it comes out in sheets, kind of like an onion. It just depends on how it comes out of the quarry, but that's what makes natural stone also very unique. And so talking about masonry substrate, just simply the existing material that you're installing that stone on top of. It can be brick, it can be concrete blocks, it can even be wood in a lot of cases when installed like this in this photo. Always making sure that the installation of the natural stone is done properly. I always tell people don't ever skimp on mortar. Don't ever try and dilute it. Don't ever try and stretch it. Mortar is very cheap, not hard to come by. Repairs and repairing the natural stone if it ever pops off and things of that nature because not installed properly. That's where the expensive part comes in. So just making sure that you take those necessary steps and the installers and the professionals you work with are well aware of their best practices. And so this is a great photo if you need this as a rough guide for yourself or for just a nice rule of thumb to know about. This can just help give you a good framework when, in this case, installing a thin stone or a thin veneer, how to install it properly, and how to make sure that natural stone that you spec for a project looks beautiful and stays there for many, many years to come. And just kind of some of the adhesive options that can go into that photo. Different types of natural stones work better with different types of adhesives. A lot of natural stones work really well with type N and type S mortar. And then manufacturers can also use a pre-mixed thin set if they want to go that route. And then really just the role of the manufacturer is just educating you, maybe doing a little bit of research to find that out to make sure everything is going to be installed properly and look great, as mentioned. So coverage, quality control, similar to that on the front end when doing quality control for a natural stone for the specification process. You want to make sure that natural stone is 100% covered on the back of it. Simply taking like a sponge, if there's dust, if there's debris on the back of the stone, I think about it when anything you want to tape, you generally want to kind of clean off that surface to make sure it sticks. Very similar to a natural stone. Just quickly wipe it off and rinse that off. Having a consistent pattern, layout, and joints. Color blending, that's another big thing to always be aware of. Some palettes will have one more of color look than another palette. We always adhere and advise that you mix those palettes as you're installing it and your contractors install it on your projects. That way you don't have a nice checkerboard on your finished results. Air temperatures, depending on where you live, humidities, all of that can play a role in how well that adhesive will bond to that natural stone. And again, if they're familiar with it and they're well versed in installing it, shouldn't be any issues on how to properly adhesively install that natural stone. So these are really, really sad photos. They're kind of a given as to why they've failed or what's gone wrong. The left photo, you can see the coverage on the back of that stone was definitely not 100%. Not really any water barrier behind it, really nothing to keep moisture getting behind it and popping off that tiled stone. The right photo looks like they just put a little bit of mortar on it and then just crossed their fingers and left it there to dry, which really ultimately didn't protect it from any of the elements that can get behind that natural stone if not properly installed. So making sure that, again, quality control, just like you measure 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, making sure that when that stone is installed, double check, triple check that you did everything properly to make sure you don't have any of these failures. happen. And then grouting options, really a unique way. Natural stone can be completely changed when talking about its look and its appearance just from the type of grout that you use to install it. So that can be a big thing to make sure you emphasize. I mean, having a white grout versus a dark grout on a white Texas limestone will completely change the look of that. Or if you acid wash it, or if you do a thick grout, or if you do a dry stack, all of those things will change the natural stone's look on the front of the building. So that's something to always keep in mind when specifying that material as well. I always recommend people when doing a dry stack never to do a true dry stack for a natural stone. What that means is you have the full backside 100% covered, and instead of having it wrap around the entirety of the natural stone, you still have a little bit of that grout or that mortar touching the bottom of the stone, just to make sure that full dry stack look is for sure adhesive properly and staying on that substrate, and you won't have any issues. So that's something to just have as a rule of thumb. I like to share with either masons or installers. So environmentally, considering the green qualities of natural stone, I've touched a little bit on them, but availability in your local regions, that's what emphasizes, that's what magnifies sourcing natural stone, is getting it from your own backyard and tying it into the areas and the culture where you source it from. I talked about life cycle cost. The initial cost of a natural stone can be a little bit more than that of some of its counterparts. But when talking about the life cycle and offsetting that, not having to change it or tear it out and replace it in 10 or so, 15 years, natural stone will be there for a lot longer after we're gone, as long as you're wanting it to stay there. Reclaim stone, I talked about. There's buyback programs to buy that recycled stone at a cheaper rate. And then heat sink, when talking about urban heat island effect, what that can do for a denser urban area when sourcing natural stone can really reduce some of those factors. Some more green building considerations to talk about. I talked about life cycle cost, the little maintenance that's required for a natural stone. And then the three words I love to associate and tie with natural stone is it can be refinished, repaired, and restored endlessly. And when you think about just that finite layer of cleaning or polishing, it really doesn't degrade or take any type of integrity away from a natural stone, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a second of why that's so important. So recyclability, all of these panels and giant pieces of natural stone that you see here were pulled off of a building and they're going to all be repurposed. So that's when you talk about reclaiming and reusing natural stone. If it doesn't have a use for its project anymore, it's not going to really ever end up in a landfill. It's just going to be repurposed for another use. And so when you look at this, you can have them broken up into flagstone pieces. They can be cut into tiled paving application walkways, or they can be crushed into aggregate, which has only been more popular for park strips, drier climate areas, just basic ground cover, but you have the benefit of having a lot of cool natural stone be used as that. So pretty cool how you can recycle it really endlessly. So talking about really just the codes or the documents that Natural Stones abide by, uh, Natural Stone Institute has all these different types of materials, information, all the fun code stuff we love to talk about, and they have all that readily available here for you on their website. So more resources they have, more training. Really, probably the most important one is ASTM testing, which is all of the testing that goes into a natural stone for modules of rupture, for flexural strength, for the absorption rate, freeze thaw, compressive strength, all of those types of data tests are found on their website for those specific stones. So talking about having the resources available right at your fingertips for a project or for a certain need that you've got, won't have to go do any digging or any, I guess, unwanted dirty work. You can find it right there on the Natural Stone Institute's website. So, more application opportunities. I touched a little bit on the engineering and the technology that's become readily available and improved through quarrying and cutting natural stone. The aesthetic to achieve these crazy projects and these really unique designs and looks is because of all of this. So, just per perspective, that saw or that block on the left, it's probably about 5 feet tall, is that big block that you see there. There are big saws and CNC machines that can cut blocks that I would argue 15 to 20 feet wide, and the blades are 10 feet wide. And they just run it through a saw, they type it into their programming and their computer, they go home, they come back, and it's cut or it's shaped whatever it is they need. So that's only improved the efficiencies and coring process as those machines become better and better. So cladding, again, what you can do with it, you can have it look more on the left side and more of a block formation, or you can have more of a traditional veneer type ledge format for the center picture. Again, more cladding photos, kind of more of a granite, squares and rect type look, but you've probably seen and are familiar with really just how it can tie into a project in a different area and it can look really, really neat. The left photo kind of showcases they decided to cover up that brick and that clay brick wall and cover it with a granite squares and rects wall of a natural stone, in this case, a natural thin veneer, really showcasing the different type of look you can achieve when deciding to do a natural stone route. An interior cladding photo. We've seen a little bit more recently bringing in natural stone inside of the home, being installed either in this case of cladding, kitchens, walkways, things of that nature, on fireplaces, of course, really unique ways to bring natural stone inside of the home. Similar to that of this photo, super heat resistant. You never have to worry about any type of popping off or degrading of that natural stone. It's gone through much worse to get it to its final state. And then again, installed outside, I've always said is what really magnifies and beautifies natural stone is being installed in its element. So around pools and outdoor areas, that's where it really shines and shows its benefits. So just to kind of summarize what we talked about today with natural stone and what it is a thin veneer that's approximately an inch and a quarter thick. It can be up to 15 pounds per square foot once installed, and that includes the adhesives and the appropriate substrate. It's available in many different varieties of either sawn, snapped, rubble, panels, and many, many different more. It's a very durable option. It will look better and longer than its counterpart of any type of manufactured or cultured stone. And the lower material and installation cost is a benefit when maybe having always used as a full bed application. So that makes it a benefit to use in that sense when still achieving that nice natural stone look. And its uses can be as backsplashes, fireplaces, wainscoting, and so many more. And so, similar to those resources earlier, all of these are found on the Natural Stone Institute's website to give you all the information you need for your products, for your specifications, and any information on that natural stone. And then just some more types of magazines and reads that you can have through their website. So the Natural Stone Institute has many, many more courses that they can share. Some are a little bit more in depth, some are a little bit more of a broader topic, but these are always options to share either in future courses or with any of your future colleagues if they ever need a natural stone speaker to come and share with them. And so that is what I had for today. Thank you so much. This is just my contact information. If you weren't able to use the link in the chat I mentioned at the beginning, you can just simply type in ceuevents.com. It'll have you type in that code and then probably register. And then that's where I can email you that certificate over after today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Austin. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. I'm gonna drop that link here in the chat too, where you
Okay.
can get attendance. I am getting a few responses that are letting me know that codes doesn't seem to be working for them.
Does
Um,
it? Okay.
yeah,
Was the link working okay?
it seems like the link was. I'm gonna drop the link where you can type
Okay.
it in the code to get attendance.
Okay.
There that is. And then yeah, I'm just having a couple of folks say that the event code is invalid.
Let me look. I'll pull it up real fast here.
Okay. And then after that, we'll hop into a few more questions. We do have some technical questions coming in as well.
Okay. Oh yeah, the code did change.
Okay.
I can give the code right now or drop it in the chat if
Yeah, I think that
that's
would be
best for
good.
people.
We could just go ahead
It
and get that out
sometimes
of the
likes
way.
to, as you create them, it'll change it as you create. So let's do this one. Okay. That should be the code that should work for this course. So let me
Okay.
know if that one works or
Here,
if
let me
there's any
actually, I
issues with
think it
that
just
one.
went to me, so I'm actually gonna send the same code to everyone.
Oh,
Okay.
thank
So that
you.
would work, everyone. And now that we've got that figured out, let's go ahead and jump into some questions that we've got. First, I do have quite a few people also asking for the slides from today's presentation. Is
Oh
that
yeah.
something you'd be willing to share?
Absolutely, yeah. This is readily available through, in this case, CEU events or the Natural Stone Institute that they're partnered with. So anyone that would like the slides, more than happy to send them your way.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. And next we have a question on, do you need lintel to support the stone over an opening? The 1.5-inch thickness seems too heavy to be supported by mortar alone.
Does it? I wouldn't say so. From experience, generally they like to go on the high end when they say an inch and a half. Usually a veneer and a thin veneer installed is 1 inch. And so as long as you're within that 1 inch, I wouldn't say you would need that installed at all. That nice little photo I showed is really all you would need with the substrate. Obviously, your water barrier, your metal lathing, your mortar used, your scratch coat. And as long as the scratch coat and the mortar installed is the correct type, then you should be good to go.
Great. All right. Next, we have a question that says, any special installation advice for interior applications?
Oh, no, I would say it makes it easier. You don't have to worry about any moisture or really any of the elements, depending on where you live. If you live in a wetter or humid climate, um, if anything, in installation, you could almost go even thinner, almost like a tile type thin. So if that's something that you're okay with when installing the natural stone, we call it thin thin. It's a really lazy way of just saying an extra thin natural stone. Everything can be done in the same manner and format, but since it's being installed inside, you can kind of get away with a slightly thinner piece of natural stone. So no, inside I think would make the installation simpler and nothing specific to change when installing it that way.
All right, next, I'm going to read this off. It says, I have a project where the client wants to use natural thin cut stone vertically installed on the sides of a new wood deck. I
Okay.
would need I would need to be supported by a wood frame assembly between the pier footings over the Durac or similar backing over wood sheathing. Have you ever seen this done successfully?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, I have not. I'm really happy to connect offline and then find some project photos that maybe match what you're talking about. And if you can send me what it looks like, I'm more than happy. I've got at least somebody that has done something similar, if not a similar rep in another area, and I can at least help connect and we can help brainstorm to get that figured out. But off the top of my head, I do not, but happy to connect and talk offline.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll share everyone's these questions and information so
Okay,
you can
perfect.
connect with. That'll be great. Um, all right. So next we've got, I realize that the stone is more difficult quarry to quarry and prepare than the process of brick making,
Mhm.
but is there a range of costs or differences between the two? Given that brick two has a range of costs depending on color, size, distance to site, etc.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Probably I would say the biggest difference for brick versus that of a natural stone. I know brick is like, I would say the running average is like $1 a brick. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. So depending on the square footage and the size of brick that you're using, most applications, yes, it would be significantly cheaper than sourcing a natural stone. I would say the biggest price difference that plays into using a natural stone versus that of maybe a brick is just where the source and where the quarry is coming from. A factory is generally going to be probably in a pretty centralized spot and area, whereas quarries typically are a little bit more remote. And so I would probably put transportation and then just labor that goes into getting that natural stone to its final state versus that of maybe like a precast brick in a factory somewhere. So that's probably where your biggest difference is, and in terms of why one would be more expensive in this case than natural stone than the brick would be.
Okay, awesome. So it looks like we've got about one more question left here.
Okay.
Um, I've seen aluminum rail mounted kerf-fed limestone wall cladding over sheathing
Hmm.
product from about 20 years ago. I'm curious if this is still made and installed.
If you remember, do you remember where it was? If you remember where it was installed or where you saw it, I could definitely probably pinpoint either if the quarry's still around or maybe who may have installed it. And that would be a great way to maybe connect those two. That's probably the only unfortunate thing with natural stone is some of these really unique projects or colors that you see the quarries will close and they'll kind of disappear, and so does the product as well unless it's found in another region in the States. So yeah, if I know you mentioned we can get that contact after the call, if you can let me know kind of where it was or where you're stationed and you saw it, I may be able to tie it back and simply through the Natural Stones website can see a localized quarry or a localized project close by.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I know we have a few more minutes left. That's the last technical question we have for now.
Okay.
I do have a few more questions about getting credit. So, Austin, could
Yeah.
you walk us through one more time how everyone can get credit? I know it's a little different than
Yeah.
what we're usually doing here.
Yeah.
Um, is it true that they should be able to click this ceuevents.com/attendance link and type in the code? I think some people are saying it's asking them to log in
Oh, is it?
code.
It shouldn't ask you to log in. I think what it should do is it will probably prompt you to register, and that would be through probably your name and your email. That's just how the Natural Stone Institute does their attendance guide and how they keep attendance.
Okay.
So there could be like for myself, I would just log in, but if you go, I know that's not the right code, but the code I typed in the chat, if you go to that website, it'll show just a nice like square on the top of the screen. Typing in that code, it should just prompt you to click register for the event, and then it should have all the details of what the event was today, and then whatever information it asks you to input for yourself.
I'm
Okay.
just gonna do this real quick together so that we can make sure everybody.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
All right. So the most recent link in the chat is this ceuevents.com/attendance. If you just open this up on your browser, I don't believe you have to sign in or anything. I'm signed out right now. You should be able to just enter this code that Austin and Kayla have also shared in the chat. So I'm going to type that in now. Oops, one moment here. Let's see. All right, great. 9A, 9H. So if I just go ahead and type in 9A, 9H here, that should go ahead and
Right. Yeah, there we go.
where I say I attended. And then this would be the portion where you might have to either sign in if you have an account or create a new
Yeah, and
one.
that's where I would ask you, yeah, to create an account. So that's where you would. And then just in case anybody's hesitant, I promise they don't send emails or they don't bombard you with any unwanted. I don't do any of that. That's just their way of keeping attendance is through that way. So
Thank you.
Appreciate that,
And
though.
yeah, if you've got any follow-up questions, you can reach out to Austin or you can reach out to us and we'll make sure we get you sorted out.
and yeah, if that's something you really just would rather not do to register, I can also get your info. I know that's a little cumbersome, but I can get your name and your AIA number and your email, and I can input it manually for you as well. If you would rather do it that way, that can also be done.
Great. Really appreciate that.
Yep.
All right. Um, I believe Eric, do you have a question, Eric? I can unmute you or you can type your question in the Q&A if you'd like. It looks like you put his hand down. That might have been a mistake. All right. Well, again, if anybody has any questions after this, we're happy to connect you and reach out. But otherwise, we appreciate everyone joining today. Thank you, Austin, for the great
Yep.
presentation, and we hope you all have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.